what should a person do? What is our duty? Philosophers throughout history have pondered over this question. What is right work? What is wrong work? If you ask Charvak, he says, Yavat jivet sukham jivet, rinam kritva gritam pevet, bhasmi bhutasya dehasya punaragamanam kuta. As long as you live, eat, drink and be merry. Because after death, you're never going to come back. So that is why Charvak's goal is enjoy. That is how you should decide your works. And the Epicurean philosophy of the Greeks was the same. Eat, drink and be merry. But in medieval times, philosophers started re-looking this. And Hobbes, a British philosopher, Helvetius, a French philosopher, they said this kind of philosophy is very detrimental to society if everybody is thinking of themselves. If the wife doesn't look out for the husband and the husband doesn't look out for the wife and they both don't look out for the children, there'll be chaos in the world. So you think of your happiness, but also the happiness of others. Swarth plus pararth. And in case there is a conflict between swarth and pararth, between your self-interest and the interest of others, then obviously choose in favor of your self-interest. Beyond that came Butler. He said that this thinking of the welfare of others, you are saying as a compromise formula, you do something for them. No, it should be done as a nature. Even the lioness will go hungry but feed her cub. Such a ferocious creature. So take a page out of her book and think about serving and meeting the welfare of the others. This was the opinion of Butler. Just telling you, if you read philosophy, you see how big thinkers have pondered over what is right, what is wrong, what is ethics, what is duty, what is purpose. They did not have the benefit of the kind of knowledge that we have. How much they struggled to find purpose and meaning. So along came Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill, and they presented the philosophy of whatever is pleasing to everyone. So if a decision is to be made, what is the right policy, they gave this criteria: the policy that provides happiness to the maximum. And Jeremy Bentham's viewpoints then, they got stretched and manifested in the democracies, in the political viewpoints that developed. Decision of right or wrong by the majority vote. But this also had its defects, because what if the majority itself is ignorant? You know, when India first chose democracy in 1947, the British Prime Minister said, "You people are making a mistake. You are not prepared for it as yet." And that is what happened. We went through so many dark ages because people were voting on all the wrong criteria. So, even 1,000 ignorant people cannot compare with one wise person. The Bahumat is not as valuable as the Shresht Mat. So another philosopher came along and he said, go by your conscience. You check with your conscience and decide as per the conscience. Now what if the conscience misleads? You ask a drunkard, why do you drink? What is wrong with it? Even the Rudragana are drinking. If I'm drinking, what is wrong with it? So, this has got its own problems. Others, they've said, use your common sense. So, a variety of viewpoints kept on coming. What do the Vedas say? What actions do we perform? What is right and what is wrong? The Vedas explain, Atmana pratikulani pareshan na samacharet. You do unto others as you want them to do unto you. Now, the Western scriptures have exactly the same sentence. Atmana pratikulani. You want others to behave kindly, graciously with you, so you behave with them in the same manner. But Shruti Smriti Sadachara Swasya Cha Priyamatmana. Check that the behavior is in accordance with the scriptures. So with that as the check, you behave with people. This is where the philosophical journey comes. That you behave, do unto others as you want them to do unto you. But even this, it doesn't serve the ultimate purpose of life, which is to get out of this cycle of life and death and reach the feet of God. For that, you need to do something else. You need to go to God. There was one preacher in the Sunday before the Preeti Bhoj in the temple. The Panditji used to give a lecture, and his lecture was so boring some people would fall asleep. And one man right in front, while Panditji would be speaking, he would be snoring. And on this day, the snoring was so loud that the lecturing was getting disturbed. So Panditji told his neighbor, please wake him up. The neighbor said, Panditji, you put him to sleep, you wake him up. God is the one who has put us in bondage. And He is the one who has to get us out of it. So if you want Him to get you out of this bondage, then what kind of karmas do you need to do? Sri Krishna explained to Arjun that, Arjun, whatever you do, any kind of karma, it has got sin attached to it. Now you say, I'll do such karmas that are free from sin. Like what? Like just sitting in my office and working. But when you're walking to office, you're killing so many living entities on the way. Is there anybody who can be free from violence? With all due respect, the Jains, they try to minimize the violence. They go to such an extent that they cover their face with a cloth. They don't want to kill the living entities. But do you think the violence is finished? The pathogens are smaller than the cloth, the threads. And when you're eating yogurt, you're killing living entities right there. Millions and trillions of them. So, Sri Krishna uses the analogy that just like on top of fire there is smoke, likewise every work has sin attached. So how do you free yourself from sin? You change the intention behind your work. You stop doing it for your pleasure and do it as an offering to the Lord. When you do that, you will then be freed of all sin. Just like in society, murder is such a terrible offense, you could be hanged for it. Most of the countries in the world, they have the law says that you can even be hanged. And here is one person who has killed somebody else and he is being brought to court. The judge says, "You killed him?" "Yes, Your Honor." "I am admitting there is no need of any witness. I am telling you I killed him." "Then you should be hanged." "No, Your Honor, you cannot punish me." "Why not?" "I had no intention to kill. I was driving my car on the right side with the right speed. My eyes were right on the road. I was undistracted. I was not listening to any Radio Mirchi or anything. This drunkard standing by the side of the road all of a sudden lunged in front of my car. What can I do?" If he can prove there was no carelessness, no intent to kill, he will not get the slightest punishment. So even in the world, this man who has committed murder will be released because his intention was not there. Now in the world, people don't know. And in the divine realm, God knows everything. He's sitting in the heart. He's noting your intention. So he says, "Arjun, when your intention becomes my pleasure, you do all your work, shubha shubha phale, phalai evam, and you offer them all to me, then any sin involved will all be wiped away. And you shall attain the supreme destination. You will be yoga yuktatma, provided you have done sannyas. Sannyas is renunciation. So if you have learned to renounce the fruits of the actions, it's not for me, and you have learned to offer it, then your mind will be in yoga, in union with the Lord, even while you're doing all your works.